Well, good morning. Our guest this morning on our stories is Ray Landon. And Ray is going to be sharing with us a story about in the early 1950s, he was in the Army and was stationed in Nevada and was involved with the testing of the atomic bomb, and had some experience there for a couple of years, and he's going to talk about that. But before we do that, we're going to show you a little video about what that was all about, in case you have forgotten or maybe didn't really ever learn about it. This will be new material for you. Just a little short video to give you a little background, and then we'll come back. So, Ray, how did you come to be involved in being in Nevada when this atomic testing was going on?
Okay, this is my story. I graduated from high school in the first part of February of 1948, and I had not gotten chemistry in my studies, so I returned to school after I'd graduated and took chemistry for a half a year. But I doubled up, so I took the whole year of chemistry in a half a year. Then I went to a 2-year college in Binghamton, New York, and studied chemical technology. And during that time, I did spend some time with Borden Chemical. It's kind of like an intern for 2-3 month periods during that 2-year period that I was in school. So when I graduated, I went back to Borden and asked them if I could have a job there. So they gave me a job, and it was in Bainbridge, New York. And Borden plant in Bainbridge, one of the things that they made there was Elmer's glue. I worked there for about 4.5 years. After I'd started work at Borden in Bainbridge, I was drafted into the military. This is in the very early part of 1951. So I took basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Then I was doing well enough, they asked if I wanted to go to officer candidate school. I agreed to that because I was in the Army. The Korean War was on, and I had no idea where I was going to end up. So I took advantage of going to OCS at Fort Riley, Kansas. And I received a commission upon graduation in the Chemical Corps. Well, the Chemical Corps had facilities at Fort McClellan, Alabama. So I took a few courses in Alabama. Then they assigned me to Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which is just outside of Denver, Colorado. And I spent time there. While I was at Rocky Mountain Arsenal, I was in a chemical decontamination unit, and that unit had been to the atomic testing grounds 2 years previous, but they were asked to go again. And that's how I ended up going to the test site to begin with. So I was an officer working in a decontamination unit. And the unit was responsible for all the instrumentation that was used on the site. That meant pocket dosimeters, film badges, and meters that would read the radiation. And then we also had clothing for people to wear. And we also decontaminated vessels, like trucks and other vehicles that had been out in the test areas could come back all dusty, and we'd clean that material off the vehicles. So that's how I ended up being out there. One of the things that we did as a unit, when they pinpointed ground zero, we went out with a vehicle with stakes, wooden stakes, and placed them from that ground zero out a distance. These are wooden stakes, and we had them numbered. And so when the explosions had taken place, we could follow that stake line in with a vessel with our monitoring instruments and read what the amount of radiation was. And we didn't, so and that was, information was sent back to the control center where they plotted it on a map.
So, when you went, did you have any idea of how dangerous the work was going to be that you were going to be doing out there?
Well, this was in 1953, and of course, we had dropped 2 bombs on Japan back in 1945 that ended the World War II. And of course, with the studies that we had at Fort McClellan, we had one course that was on radiation, and so we had a pretty good idea, you know, what radiation could do, and the protective measures you needed to take to protect yourself. Where they built 2 houses. One was 1 mile from ground zero, and the other was 2 miles from ground zero. And the effect of the explosion was that the first house was just blasted away, and the second house caught on fire, and then the blast that followed snuffed the fire out, but it didn't destroy the house.
Right.
Now, you gotta remember, heat travels the same speed as light.
So there were 2 atomic bomb tests while you were there, is that correct?
Well, I witnessed 1 bomb drop, and I witnessed 1 shot out of what they call the atomic cannon.
Right.
And then I witnessed a couple tower shots.
They called them that, but the explosion actually took place above ground, right? From my understanding, that the bombs didn't detonate on hitting the ground; they detonated above the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, the atomic shell, and the bomb exploded in the air.
Yeah.
As did the bombs in Japan.
Yeah.
But the tower shots, the towers were about 300 feet tall, and the device was inside in an enclosure at the top of the tower.
So when you were in Colorado, and then they informed you that, you know, your next duty was going to be here in Nevada with this, were there any soldiers who were saying that, well, I don't know if I want to go there? You know, that any of them feel like they were going to be exposing themselves to?
Well, the unit, as I say, before we went to Nevada, we all went back to Fort McClellan and did some studying on radiation there.
Right.
The whole unit did that.
Yeah.
Then the unit went by train to Nevada, and of course I, being an officer, was able to go by vehicle. And so the people in the unit understood, you know,
Sure.
what radiation can do.
Right.
And then with the protective clothing that was worn and so forth, and in fact, the protective clothing included masks and gloves and the whole bit.
But
I never knew of anyone that was in a unit that ever had any
health?
any issues or problems.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
When we went into the areas, we were wearing film badges.
Mm-hmm.
Film badges were designed to pick up the radiation and hold on to it, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then that film badge would then be processed, and it would tell you what the exposure was for whatever period of time you were out there. But we had a limitation. We had a limitation for people going out into the test areas, you know, wearing the film badges. There was a maximum amount that they could receive.
Yeah.
And once they reached that level, they were no longer allowed or permitted to go into the test areas.
Yeah, they had to come out then. Yeah. Well, sounds like it was really a very kind of intense part of your, you know, early years there, being in the military and doing that kind of work. That's Ray in 1953. Yeah.
These pictures were sent to me by a woman that was working with a museum. There is a museum in the Las Vegas area relating to the testing that the government did at there in Nevada.
Well, thank you so much. This has really been interesting and, you know, very, very unique experience for sure.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, thanks for coming in.